Reactor online. Sensors online. Weapons online. All systems nominal.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a BattleTech basic lore primer oversimplified video on Wolf's Dragoons. This is specifically going to be on Wolf's Dragoons' origins and original mission. The reason for this oversimplified format of this basic lore primer video is because there's a lot going on with Wolf's Dragoons, a lot of characters, a lot of different inner turmoil, you could say, a lot of different drama and what have you, and lore that spans a good amount of time that we could be here all day talking about them. And without getting too bogged down in the minutiae of all that really cool, sweet lore, I just want to establish the basics so somebody new to BattleTech will have an understanding of the Wolf's Dragoons, their setup, their whole original shtick, and why they are considered one of the top mercenary groups. So definitely share your thoughts, whether you are brand new to the setting or you are a Wolf's Dragoon diehard fan. Share your thoughts, questions, insights, whatever tidbits of lore that you really enjoy in the comment section. Just be aware I'm not going to get that deep in here. The idea is just to establish a sturdy foundation so people can have some common ground, if you want to think of it that way, for discussion purposes. So with that being said, Wolf's Dragoons takes us back to the year 3000, which is before they even were founded, because their founding comes from debate. Yes, it comes from debate from clans in the clan homeworlds. It's kind of funny that one of the premier mercenary groups that really exemplifies the idea of honor and integrity and professionalism in a mercenary unit, kind of that glorified way mercenaries should be, comes from the clans. But to understand why, we have to first understand that the clans, by and large, have two guiding principal philosophies, among some others. But typically, especially at this time, a clan will identify either as a Crusader or a Warden clan, even if they have elements of both within. Ultimately, they lean towards one way or the other. Now, Crusaders want to take an active role in saving the Inner Sphere by conquering it to save it from themselves and then rule it and implement a second Star League and all that, with the clans having a guiding hand in all of it. Whereas the Warden clans want to just leave the Inner Sphere alone and monitor. And if they are about to have a human extinction level event happen across the Inner Sphere, or if aliens attack, which is also in the lore, then the Warden clans would want to step in. So a difference of philosophy, and that's a really watered down version of both. So this is important because at this time, Ghost Bear is a Crusader clan, and their Khan suggests invading the Inner Sphere in the year 3000. This, of course, sparks debate amongst Crusader and Warden clans and their viewpoints, and the base turns into different trials and refusals and whatever else, and eventually the end result is a compromise. Why? Because the clans operate for big things like this with a Grand Council, which incorporates all the voting clans. And with that, if it doesn't pass a vote there, then it doesn't happen. And the clans abide by this, but the clans do have honor, right? Honor is an important part of clan society, not just in the warrior caste, but through all the castes. And whatever is decided upon by the Grand Council of the clans is upheld, even if you don't like it. So in this case, firstly, in the past, there have been some calls to invade the Inner Sphere too that have been voted down. In this case, it seems like things were a lot closer, a lot more heated, and a compromise was suggested, the Dragoon Compromise. Now, this compromise you could view as ultimately a stall tactic by the Warden clans, but it's one that makes sense logistically, and the Crusader clans agreed to it. And that is how we get the formation of the Wolf's Dragoons. So before getting into that, if you're still here, that's pretty cool. I'm glad to still have you with me. Stay a while, share your thoughts, listen, hang out. And if you're not subscribed yet, why not? You're still here. It's free and easy to do. There's alpha strike that subscribe button, set the notifications how you like them so you can be informed when I post more videos. And that will help combat the algorithm, which is always the target, right? So I hope you consider taking the shot. Instead of the clans taking the shots at the Inner Sphere, they would instead formulate a plan, the Dragoon Compromise. And the whole process of this is that they will send in a actually rather large unit to pose as a mercenary group and gain information, garner intelligence and data and whatever else of the Inner Sphere. How are things actually? Because the clans keep tabs on the Inner Sphere, but it's not like they keep tabs by showing up and taking a tour, right? They just keep tabs by communiques and whatever else that kind of comes their way. And so they have an understanding of what's going down in the Inner Sphere with succession wars and the technological issues and things of that nature. But what they don't have is real in-depth analysis of like certain worlds or how a great house is functioning, in terms of like how powerful they are on an individual level in comparison to the rest, like in actuality, not just in propaganda and things of that nature. So sending forth a unit that will report directly back to the clan homeworlds that's posing as a mercenary unit is a very good way to gather intelligence. Now this would ultimately be headed up by Clan Wolf, and they would be the ones sending in forces. Clan Wolf has a decent amount of freeborn warriors in their warrior caste, and they would be the ones selected mostly for this service, with two freeborn warrior brothers, Joshua and Jamie, leading the crew. Now, they would have trueborn warriors, and they would even have blood name warriors associated with this as well. In fact, Natasha Kerensky, which is a well-known character of Clan Wolf, basically BattleTech's settings Black Widow, she led Black Widow Company. She would be a part of the Wolf's Dragoons prior to then returning to the Clan Wolf when the recall order was given. So we do have some warriors of renown, you could say, going on this mission as well. Now, before we go any further, why is it called Wolf's Dragoons? Well, it both is and is not, because Clan Wolf is the one that's heading it up. Let me explain. So this naming is not due to the clan, but due to Joshua and Jamie. See, they do not have blood names, which are what we would call last names or surnames. They don't have that in clan society. You have to earn that, and you have to earn the right to then try and earn it, basically. So it's a prestigious thing. And when you are a warrior of the clans and you don't have a blood name, the way it more or less works out is that you are just referred to by your name and then your clan. This is why in MechWarrior 5 Clan Smoke Jaguar campaign, you hear Jaden get referred to in a more official sense as Jaden Smoke Jaguar. The same thing happens for, let's say, Billy Ghost Bear, and in this case, Joshua and Jamie Wolf. Now, in this case, it works out really nicely because it flows off the tongue very nice. It feels like a natural last name. In fact, in the real life, if you look at a phone book, I'm sure you could find a wolf in the phone book, right? So it just flows off, the tongue, and it fits very naturally as a name. So they would be referred to in their warrior cast situation with Clan Wolf as Joshua Wolf and Jamie Wolf. So, because they are the leaders, and they are Joshua and Jamie Wolf, it is the Wolf's Dragoons. If they had a blood name, or if it was some other clan entirely, it would be whatever that blood name or the other clan name is, and then Dragoons. If you're wondering why Natasha Kerensky wasn't heading it up or something like that, well, the goal is to not attract attention to where they came from, and if you have the name of Kerensky flat out there in the first contact, it's going to garner some suspicion. Natasha Kerensky would be known eventually, but she doesn't lead it, so they can kind of eat into having just that name, and they can easily brush it off as being a lost descendant or whatever. No big deal. Now, they were given express orders not to reveal where they come from, and they would not, at least not until the clan invasion, but they would follow that and keep that secret. Now, their goal was to enter Inner Sphere space and be somewhat unassuming as essentially 5 or so regiments worth of warriors could be. And I say that because mercenary groups don't tend to be that large. A few are, but by and large they are much smaller. And so a brand new unit out of nowhere being that large is going to turn some heads no matter what. But they figured, okay, we will equip them in a way that feels befitting of what would be present, right? We would equip them in a way to try and blend in and be unassuming, and the clans would fail spectacularly there. You see, firstly, some of their heaviest hitting equipment is stuff the Inner Sphere has never seen, such as the Imp and the Annihilator assault mechs. From there, you have the fact that, yes, they have mechs that everybody has seen, Commandos and Hunchback and whatever else, right? Warhammer, Marauder, well-known mechs. But then they also have mechs like the Falcon and I believe even the Flea. These are mechs that for a period of time would be considered quite rare. Relics, not because they're super old and unuseful, but because they have that level of like prestige surrounding them that the Inner Sphere does not see much of at all. And this mercenary unit is going to be equipped with a lot of them. You see, the clans thought they were understaffing their units basically, and they would have to punch up and salvage and whatever else to a degree. That they thought that they were putting them into a position of looking weak to help be unassuming and just really be more of a numbers game than just raw power. But the actual fact of the matter is they don't look that way. They look very strong. The Imp and the Annihilator are ridiculously good mechs. They have a mobile space station. That's the word I was looking for. They have a mobile space station that within it has a factory that can produce their own variant of the Archer, which isn't exactly a standard issue for mercenary groups. And they have a bunch of mechs, in addition to the ones that are known, that are also rare and considered pretty valuable if you just have one, and they have them by a good amount. Now, they want to appear unassuming, which they didn't do, but even if they did, their mechs would be anything but, especially for their commanders and other officers. They would have basically Starleague tech, Lost tech in place of the standard tech you'd expect. So, a Warhammer would have ERPPCs, not just PPCs, just to kind of put it into perspective here. So they'd still be quite potent, even if they did achieve the desired result of looking unassuming, which they failed at spectacularly. What also doesn't help the fact is they have a full selection of support vehicles, such as dropships. They have different types. They have the Union, they have the Leopard, they have Overlord, which are not exactly common, and they have one that's called the Lion, which is basically extinct in the Inner Sphere. Alongside that, they have their own jump ships. Not one, but several of their own jump ships. This is unheard of in the Inner Sphere, more or less. I mean, some of the biggest names will basically have jump ships that are just attached to them and that are basically theirs. But for a new mercenary unit out of nowhere to have a full suite of jump ships and drop ships is, alongside that mobile space station and these Starleague era pristine mechs, made everybody kind of widen their eyes and wonder what's happening. Ultimately, it was chalked up to them having successfully looted a Starleague cache somewhere and gotten really lucky. The dream that everybody else had. Apparently these guys pull it off is ultimately what they assumed. This doesn't answer the sheer size of their numbers, their professionalism, and their elite warrior status, but that could just be presumed to be fighting in the periphery or whatever else, right? Whatever happens beyond the borders of the Inner Sphere is not really their concern. They came from beyond the borders, so they probably came from the periphery somewhere. Makes sense to them, ultimately. Still, they were treated with a bit of suspicion at first because nobody knew what their intentions were. They could have easily started invading worlds and conquering things and putting things to the sword, and there wouldn't be a lot that would be able to be done quickly about it. Instead, they opened up communication channels and wanted to become, under contract with the different great houses, and they would start with House Davion. Now, A quick thing of note that I think is pretty funny is that we have ourselves here a situation where they hid things away in a supply cache. They didn't even show their full might. If they did, I don't know if any communications would happen. I think Worlds might just have surrendered to them that they showed up at least the very first one they showed up at, and there might have just been open war happening. This is because in addition to storing away supplies and technology, they also hid away in secret their full fleet of warships. They had 6 warships. House Davion has 0 warships. In fact, none of the houses have any functional warships. So it would have been quite a shell shock situation if they showed up with their warships. So yeah, they were equipped as such, thinking that's basically, you know, that should fit in, and it does anything but fit in, which is kind of funny. So their goal, like I said, was to recon the inner sphere. Now read between the lines. This is a Warden clan setting up this goal, or the Warden clan has fit the bill more or less, but this goal was devised by the Warden clan as a compromise. So what do you really read this as? What I read this as is stall the Crusader clans, aka be thorough, which means take your time. And that's exactly what they would do. In fact, the way they worked in the beginning was to be contracted specifically to each individual great house over a period of years. They would start off with House Davion for 5 years, and they would move on for 5 years to another house, and so on down the line. And they would have their scuffles and their setbacks and things of that nature. Draconis Combine would try to just possess them, which didn't end well. Stuff like that. But ultimately, throughout it all, their professionalism, their integrity, their elite capabilities shone through. They didn't just get lucky, if you will, with supply cache, although we know the truth. They can throw down, and they can throw down really well, and they are honorable. They are everything that the industry glorifies a mercenary company to be like, and they do it at a large size, right? So they're not the only mercenary group of this size, but they are amongst really tight company. There isn't a lot out there in terms of mercenaries that can field regiments worth of units, and the Wolves Dragoons is one of them. Now, throughout their time of being loyal to the clans, they would indeed be garnering data and doing their recon and figuring things out, as well as doing some supply runs back to the clan homeworld space, you know, a portion of them. And in doing so, they would also bring with them Isorla, things that they've taken as Isorla, right, from Spoils of War, including some Jenner chassis, which would go on to spur on the development of the Jenner 2C prior to the clan invasion. So they were taking their job seriously, and they were definitely providing detailed reports. However, eventually, those reports would stop. And even though not everybody in Wolves Dragoons went native, that's basically what happened for this mercenary group overall. They basically became full blue, true mercenary groups, still held on to that professionalism and integrity, but had that innate knowledge, had that tech aptitude, had that strong logistics supply and tech chain up until they stopped basically corresponding with the clans. Now, it's as easy as just not doing the data sending back, right? That's as easy as it is to kind of switch sides, and even those that are loyal to the clans wouldn't really be none the wiser, right? It's just those in upper leadership. Why this happens is they are wardens, more or less, you could say, at their core, and a lot of them would have families, right? They would create a family while in the inner sphere, and they would also be recruiting from the inner sphere to replenish, you know, personnel that is going to happen via the attrition of combat. So they're now becoming a mixed bag, and they're becoming more comfortable in the inner sphere, and they're liking it, right? No bones about it. So at some point, upper leadership made the conscious decision to just flip gears and cease reporting in, and basically just do the whole mercenary thing there in the inner sphere. It should be noted that Clan Wolf was still able to send a message to them prior to the start of Operation Revival as a recall order, and that some of their number would indeed return back to Clan Wolf, Natasha Kerensky being one of them. So it's not like they were completely out of communication. They just ceased to send communications or really respond, and Clan Wolf just so happened to never really try and press the issue, you could say. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. In any case, though, its objective was fulfilled. There was detailed analysis and reports on the inner sphere at large happening, and the clans would receive that, and it would be helpful, even if a little outdated, because it would take decades for this information to eventually trickle in, and then decades until they actually would invade the inner sphere. So a little outdated, but still useful in comparison to having nothing. But ultimately, Wolf's Dragoons would just be yet another mercenary group through and through, albeit one with a great reputation and power. Now, they would receive their due calamities and trials and tribulations throughout the timeline, but they were also pretty instrumental in the schism of Comstar to maintain the integrity of the Mercenary Review Board stuff, right? Not exactly by the same name, but after faith in Comstar and their capabilities were shaken by people and mercenary viewers and people wanting to hire out mercenaries, you have Wolf's Dragoon, amongst others, kind of really helping keep that professionalism alive and having a proper board, if you will, for hiring out mercenaries, which is pretty cool. Anyways, it's not like it would have gone to the wayside. It would just been much more of kind of a Wild West situation in regards to hiring a merc unit. So with that said, that is the basics of Wolf's Dragoons, their origins and their original mission statement, if you will, and what they did originally. So they never had straight up clan mechs with them necessarily. Maybe in deep storage somewhere, maybe, but really when it came to their time in the Inner Sphere, what they had was a bunch of standard Inner Sphere mechs, but all with Star League era tech. Not all, but especially for those VIP officers, if you will. Lost tech, definitely through and through. That wasn't the only thing that made them mighty. Their individual skill and their advanced training that they do also made them quite mighty. In any case, what are your thoughts on the Wolf's Dragoons? Are they your merc unit of choice? Do you prefer the Grey Death Legion? Maybe you're a Northwind Highlander. Whatever the case is, let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for tuning in and stopping by. Don't forget, if you haven't yet, to Alpha Strike that subscribe button. And until next time, take care.